I shouldn't be alive. Not after what happened inside that apartment. I know how that sounds. Like I'm overreacting or making things up. But if you've ever scrolled through late-night rental sites looking for something cheap, something suspiciously perfect, you might want to hear this. You might want to think twice before clicking book now. The listing came out of nowhere. I was up at 3 a.m., too wired on caffeine and stress to sleep, doom-scrolling job forums, and Craigslist when a banner ad popped up. It wasn't from any mainstream site. It was something called Echo Rental. Never heard of it. Still haven't found any trace of it since. But there it was. 1BR in downtown LA. Historic building. $450 MO. Move-in ready. It felt tailored. Like it knew exactly what I needed. A quiet space. Cheap. Anonymous. And available. Now. I clicked. And within minutes, I'd filled out a form, sent over my info, and received a confirmation email with an access code. No application, no landlord interview. Just a location. 701 Crescent Avenue, apartment 6E. I should have known right then. Something felt off. Too easy. Too clean. But I was desperate. I was sleeping in my car, surviving on vending machine coffee and rejection letters from script agencies. So the idea of a real bed, even if haunted, was enough to make me ignore the warning signs. I drove there that same morning. The building was beautiful in that old, forgotten kind of way. Cracked marble lions at the entrance. Brass fixtures dulled by time. A fading sign above the door that read, "The Delacroix." Inside, it smelled like time itself. Dust, wood rot, and something else. Something metallic, like old blood or rusted pipes. A man stood by the elevator. No uniform. No name tag. Just stillness. His eyes were gray, almost glassy, like he hadn't blinked in years. He handed me a single brass key, without saying a word. 6E. I didn't even question it. I was tired, numb. I took the key, rode the elevator up 6 floors, and stepped into what I thought would be a new beginning. But here's where it gets strange. The hallway was silent. No flickering lights, no hum of other tenants, just still air and the sound of my own breath. And when I unlocked the door to 6E and stepped inside, I felt it immediately, like crossing a barrier, like I'd entered someplace that didn't want to be seen. It wasn't just an apartment. It was something else, something that had been waiting. And if you're watching this right now, I want you to remember one thing. If a place feels like it's watching you, it probably is. So stay. Don't skip ahead, because you need to know what I found inside apartment 6E. The apartment was untouched, not just clean, vacant, like no one had lived there in decades. No furniture, no curtains, just a naked bulb hanging from the ceiling, and that heavy, suffocating silence pressing against my ears. I stepped in, and the air felt thick, heavy, like walking underwater. The floorboards creaked beneath me, not the usual groaning of old wood, but something more deliberate, like they were reacting to me. Still, I told myself it was fine. I was used to weird LA apartments, drafty walls, bad wiring, maybe a squatter or two. Nothing I couldn't handle. So I closed the door behind me, tossed my backpack onto the dusty floor, and opened the single window that overlooked the street. But that's when I noticed something wrong. The view didn't make sense. I should have been looking out over Crescent Avenue. That's what the map showed. But instead of traffic, signs, or even streetlights, I saw nothing. Just a stretch of concrete leading into rows of buildings I didn't recognize. All dark, all windowless. The skyline behind them was too flat, too smooth, like someone had painted it on. And the sky itself? It wasn't night. It wasn't day either. It was this deep, bruised purple, with clouds that didn't move, frozen like oil on water. I stared for too long. The silence outside was thicker than the one inside. Eventually, I had to look away. My head was spinning. I turned back to face the room and tried to ground myself, one step at a time. Unpack, eat, sleep, sort things out tomorrow. Simple. I dropped down onto the floor, leaning against the far wall. That's when I saw the etching. Near the corner, where the baseboard met the wall, there were faint scratch marks. A single sentence, scrawled in something that looked too dark to be ink. "You're in the wrong version." My chest tightened. I reached out to touch it, but as soon as my fingers brushed the letters, the light bulb above me flickered, then buzzed back to life, brighter than before. And that's when the noises started. A low hum at first, like distant machinery. Then footsteps, slow dragging, just beyond the apartment door. I didn't move. I couldn't. The footsteps passed by once, then again, but when I looked through the peephole, there was no one, only the hallway, still and empty. I thought about leaving then. I really did. But the air inside that room held me in place, like invisible hands pressing on my shoulders. My body felt anchored, my mind foggy, like the apartment had decided I wasn't leaving yet. So I stayed. And that was the first night I dreamed of other versions of myself, trapped in rooms just like this one, screaming silently behind glass. I didn't know it then, but I had already crossed into something else, someplace I wasn't meant to find. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No traffic, no voices, not even birds. Just that low, persistent hum, like a refrigerator running in another room. Except I didn't own a fridge. I didn't own anything in that apartment. I got up, dressed, and decided I needed answers. The elevator was slow, creaking down each floor, like it had forgotten how to move. I passed no one, no tenants, no noise, just empty halls and flickering lights. Down in the lobby, the man who'd given me the key, if that's what he was gone. In his place sat a woman in a brown maintenance uniform, reading a book with no title on the cover. I asked her about the apartment. 6E? She repeated, not looking up. Yeah, I said. I just moved in yesterday. She looked at me then, slowly, like she was turning her head underwater. That unit's been vacant since the fire. You must mean 6B. No, 6E, I insisted, pulling out the key. This one. She stared at it, then at me. Her face didn't change, but her eyes, they were filled with something I couldn't read. Fear? Recognition? Without another word, she stood and walked into the back office, locking the door behind her. That was it. No explanation, no help, just silence and locked doors. I went to the leasing office next, pulled up the property records on my phone. Nothing. No echo rental, no listing, no documentation that 6E even existed. On the official floor plan, the apartments on the 6th floor skipped from 6D straight to 6F. No 6E. I thought maybe I'd misread the number. Maybe the plate was wrong. So I took the elevator back up, walked the hallway, counted the doors. 1, 2, 3, 4 doors. And mine was the last one on the left. 6E. I knocked on the unit across from mine. No answer. I tried again. Nothing. As I turned to leave, I heard a lock slide open behind me. A man, maybe late 70s, opened the door just a crack. His eyes were sharp, but his skin was pale and sunken, like he hadn't seen daylight in weeks. "Sorry," I said. "Do you know anything about the unit across from you?" "I just moved in." He cut me off. "You need to leave." "What? You're not supposed to be in there," he said, glancing past me at the closed door to 6E. "Why?" But he didn't answer. Just shut the door. I heard at least 3 locks click shut behind it. I stood there for a long moment, my breath stuck in my chest. The hallway felt colder now, longer, and when I turned back toward my apartment, I noticed something I hadn't before. There was no door handle on the inside. That night, I made sure to wedge a chair beneath the doorknob, not because I was afraid of someone coming in, but because I was afraid I might try to leave and not find the hallway anymore. I know how that sounds, but when I stepped inside that place, something shifted. Not just outside me, inside me. The walls felt closer, literally. I had measured the living room on the first day, 10 feet across, but that night, when I stretched my arms out and walked the length again, it was at least 2 feet shorter. I thought I was imagining things, maybe just tired. Maybe I'd hit my head, so I decided to sleep it off. I laid down in the corner where I'd set up my sleeping bag, phone in hand, flashlight close by. I stared at the ceiling until sleep took over, and with it, the dreams came back. But this time, they weren't dreams. They were memories, except they weren't mine. I saw myself walking through a different hallway, same building, same number on the door, but the walls were green, the lights fluorescent. I watched myself knock on the door, open it, step inside, and never come back out. When I jolted awake, it was still dark. The light bulb was dead again. I reached for my flashlight, but it wasn't there. My bag was gone. I looked around frantically, and that's when I saw it. The door to the bathroom was on the wrong side. It had moved. I was sure of it. I'd used that bathroom the night before. It was next to the kitchen counter, not across from it. But now, it had shifted. The kitchen itself had moved too. Cabinets where there weren't any. A faucet dripping from a sink I didn't recognize. I opened the bathroom door slowly. Inside, it wasn't a bathroom anymore. It was a hallway, longer than it should have been, too long, and at the end of it, another door, identical to mine. I closed it, hard. Back in the living room, something metallic rolled across the floor. I bent down and picked it up. A coin, old, worn, with a face I didn't recognize, etched with symbols that hurt to look at. Then came the whispers again. This time, not from the hallway, but from the walls themselves, like they were full of people just behind the plaster, pressing against the drywall, trying to get in, or trying to warn me. I backed into the corner, heart racing, when the window suddenly slammed shut on its own. The temperature dropped, like a freezer door had opened. My breath came out in clouds. Then I saw my reflection in the glass. But it wasn't doing what I was doing. It just stared at me, smiling. I couldn't look away from the glass. My reflection was still there, still smiling, even though I wasn't. It tilted its head slightly, and I swear to you, it blinked out of sync with me. That was the last thing I remember before blacking out. When I woke up, the sun was up, or something pretending to be the sun. The light pouring through the window was too bright, too sterile. It didn't warm the room. It didn't cast shadows. It just was. I crawled toward the window, slowly. What I saw outside didn't match anything on Earth. The buildings were wrong. Slabs of black stone, smooth and gleaming, stretching impossibly tall into the sky. They had no windows, no entrances, just towering monoliths arranged in precise geometric patterns, like a language spelled in architecture. And the sky, it was the color of a deep bruise, purple veined with black. The clouds didn't move. They hung suspended in the air, like wet cloth on invisible hooks. Above them, something massive stirred, something behind the clouds. It cast shadows that didn't line up with the angles of the buildings. It moved like a creature, breathing in its sleep. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but then the shadow twitched again, and everything outside trembled, as if reality itself was afraid. I backed away from the window. That's when my phone buzzed. I hadn't touched it in hours. Battery should have been dead. One new notification. New audio recording detected. 3:14 a.m. I didn't remember recording anything, but I pressed play. At first, all I heard was static, then breathing, then my voice. Not speaking, whispering, repeating a phrase I'd never heard before, in a language I couldn't understand. It sounded ancient, wet, like the syllables were made of rot and bone. I felt dizzy just listening to it. My vision blurred. I dropped the phone, and it shattered on impact, despite being in a case. The screen went black, permanently. I tried the door again. Still no handle, still no exit. I pounded on the wall, screamed through the vents. Anything, but the apartment absorbed the sound. It didn't echo, it just swallowed it. Then the light flickered again, and the whispering started anew. But now, it wasn't coming from the phone or the walls. It was coming from the drain in the kitchen sink. I leaned in slowly. The air above it was vibrating, humming, and just as I got close, I heard one word, perfectly clear: return. I stumbled back, heart hammering, trying to understand what I was supposed to return to. But part of me already knew. Whatever this place was, it wasn't just an apartment. It was a gateway, and something on the other side had finally noticed I was there. That night, I decided I couldn't stay in that apartment another second. I didn't care what was outside the window or whispering through the pipes. I didn't care if I ended up sleeping in my car again. I just needed to get out. Now. I grabbed the key, my backpack, and ran to the front door. Still no handle, but I remembered something. The fire escape. I'd seen it from the hallway when I first arrived. If I could get out through the window, maybe I could climb down and leave this whole nightmare behind. But when I opened the window, the fire escape was gone. In its place was a sheer drop, not to a street, but to an endless void. The buildings, the ground, even the air seemed to fall away into a chasm of nothing. The only thing visible was a faint red glow far, far below, pulsing like a heartbeat. I stepped back in horror. That left the hallway. I turned to the apartment door. The handle was still gone, but the door itself was now slightly ajar. It was inviting me. I opened it fully, half expecting to find the same hallway as before. But the space beyond was different. It was the stairwell. Only this time, it spiraled downward, endlessly, in a perfect corkscrew. The walls were lined with flickering bulbs that extended far into the darkness below. No sounds, no echo, just stairs and light and an oppressive silence. I stepped into it, cautiously, down one flight, 2, 10, no change. My legs started to ache. My breath came quicker. The deeper I went, the colder it became. After what felt like an hour, I stopped and looked back up. The top was gone. Just more stairs, stretching upward forever now, too. There was no up, no down, just spiral. At one point, I passed a door. No number, no peephole, just a dark wooden door, slightly open. I pushed it gently, and behind it was my apartment. Same furniture, same window, same everything. Only this time, it was covered in dust and cobwebs. My backpack was still on the floor, but it looked like it had been there for years. I picked it up and saw something sitting on the table. A printed manuscript. My script, complete, bound, titled, "The Apartment That Wasn't on the Floor Plan." My name on the cover. Only, the date was wrong. It said 1998. I wasn't even born yet. And when I flipped it open, every page was filled with scenes I hadn't written yet. Dialogues I'd never thought of. Things that hadn't happened, but were about to. I wasn't just living in the story. I was following a script. I stumbled back from the table, the script still in my hands. My heart was pounding so hard, it echoed in my ears. I tried to scream, to cry, something, but no sound came out. Just a dry rasp, like my voice had been stolen. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around and came face to face with myself, or a version of me. Same face, same clothes, but older, exhausted, hollow. His eyes were bloodshot, and his skin had a faint grayish tint, like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. He didn't speak. He just looked at me with deep, pleading eyes and shook his head slowly, as if to say, "You shouldn't be here." Then he vanished. Not walked away, not faded, just gone, like he'd blinked out of existence. I dropped the script and ran, back into the stairwell, down, down, always down. I lost count of the floors. My legs were numb. The lights started to dim. The walls began to pulse, subtly breathing in and out like lungs. And with each step I took, I saw them, more versions of myself. Some climbing, some crawling, some just sitting on the steps. staring into the void, all of them broken. One looked up and whispered, "You're the lucky one. You got the script." Another screamed, "He's watching. He's always watching." I kept running. Eventually, I reached another door. This one had my name on it, carved into the wood in jagged, frantic letters. I opened it, hoping, praying to be free. But it was just another apartment. My apartment. Only now, it was covered in hundreds of photographs. Every single one of me, from every possible age and reality. Some smiling, some terrified, some missing eyes or mouths. And in the center of the room, a mirror, cracked, ancient. I approached it slowly, and this time, my reflection didn't move at all. It just stood there, staring, bleeding from the eyes. Then it raised its hand, pointed behind me, and whispered, in my own voice, "It's your turn now." I turned around and saw the window slowly opening on its own. The void outside was calling. I didn't go to the window, not because I wasn't curious, but because I couldn't move. The voice behind me, my own voice, had paralyzed me. I stood there, muscles locked, as if gravity had tripled. My reflection remained frozen in the cracked mirror, watching me, without blinking, still bleeding, still smiling. Then came the noise. It wasn't whispering anymore. It was chanting, a deep, resonant drone vibrating through the apartment, not from any single place, but from within the walls, the floor, the air itself, a language older than language. I felt it behind my eyes, pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. The walls began to ripple, and the photographs around me started melting, faces twisting into unrecognizable forms. My own image, distorted over and over again, each version of me less human than the last. The apartment was coming alive. No, it had always been alive. I was just starting to hear it now. I collapsed to the floor and crawled toward the hallway, desperate for escape, for silence. I clawed my way out, inch by inch, until I reached the door and stopped. There, scrawled in black ash across the front panel, was a phrase, "You are the thinning point." I didn't understand it at first, but as I stared at the words, my skin began to crawl. Images flooded my mind, cities collapsing, stars flickering out, eyes in the sky staring down at a planet they'd long since abandoned. I saw myself in all of it. Not just me, but countless versions, all trapped, all chosen. Somehow, I was the link, the breach, the weak spot through which something ancient was leaking into our world. Slowly, methodically, patiently. The apartment wasn't just a trap. It was a conduit, and the entity that inhabited it was learning. With each version of me it consumed, it grew more aware, more human. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. My jaw locked tight. Blood dripped from my nose as the pressure in my skull built higher and higher, like something inside me was awakening. Then the walls cracked. Hairline fractures stretched across the ceiling, glowing faintly with a sickly blue light. And through the cracks, I saw it. Not a creature, not even a god, just awareness, a presence, vast and ancient and hungry, not evil, not good, just there, timeless, watching, waiting. It knew my name. It had always known my name. And now, I knew its. I can't speak it. There's no sound for it. No shape the mouth can form. But I felt it. Like a memory I was never supposed to have. The chanting grew louder. The room began to bend. And then, everything went dark. When I woke up, I wasn't in the same apartment. Or maybe I was. Maybe this was just another version of it. One of thousands, millions. It looked familiar. Same window, same layout, same smell of dust and static. But everything had changed. The walls pulsed like living tissue. The doorways shifted when I wasn't looking. Shadows moved with no source of light, stretching across the floor like fingers reaching for me. I was no longer inside a place. I was inside a mind. I wandered from room to room, hoping for an exit, a crack in the illusion. But every door opened into another version of the apartment. Some were burned out, some were flooded, some were covered in vines or bones or mirrors that screamed when I looked into them. Each version contained echoes of me. In one, I found myself writing frantically on the walls in blood. In another, I was sitting in silence, rocking back and forth, whispering. I made it worse. In the last one, I wasn't moving at all. I approached the figure slowly. The room was completely silent, the air still. My heartbeat was the only sound I could hear. The man on the floor looked mummified, dried skin stretched over brittle bones, same clothes, same face. His hands were clutching something, a small object, tightly gripped in death. I knelt beside him and pried it from his fingers. It was a key, my key, identical in every way to the one I still carried. Only this one was warm, pulsing, breathing. I stood and turned toward the door, only to find the wall was gone. In its place, a corridor, endless, flickering, and at the far end, I saw a figure watching me, not moving, not threatening, just waiting. I knew instinctively what it was. It was me, not another version, not a reflection, just me, stripped of illusion, of timelines, of body, what I would become, the final iteration, the shape I'd been leading myself toward from the beginning. He opened his mouth, and though no sound came out, I heard the message clearly. There is no escape. You are the story now. I stepped forward, not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice, because I was always going to end up here, because the last room is always yours. I woke up in the dark, or maybe I never truly woke up at all. The next thing I remember is staring at a screen, a Reddit post titled, "The Apartment That Wasn't on the Floor Plan." It wasn't mine, at least, not exactly. It was written in my voice, every word typed as if I had been trapped behind this glowing rectangle all along. The post was dated 2 weeks after my disappearance. It told the whole story, every detail, every nightmare, every impossible staircase. But there was one line that stood out. If you see this apartment online, don't rent it. I'm still here. So are the others. Attached was a photo. At first glance, It was the apartment window I'd come to know so well. But in the reflection, behind the cracked glass, was a figure. Not me, something else. Eyes glowing faintly red, watching, waiting. The comments below were sparse. A few curious Redditors asked if it was a creepypasta or a hoax. Some mocked the story, but one user replied, "I almost moved in. I'm canceling now." The post had no update after that. No answers. No rescue. Just silence. I realized then that my story was no longer mine to tell. It was a warning, a message, a trap. I don't know how long I've been trapped in this loop, this endless rewriting of myself, but I know one thing for certain. If you ever find a listing too good to be true, with a price too low, on a site no one remembers, don't ignore the warning signs, because some apartments don't just house tenants, they consume them. And the walls, they remember. I'm still here, and if you rent apartment 6E, maybe I'll see you soon. If you've watched this far, hit subscribe, because if anything happens to me next, I want someone to know I existed, someone to remember, and maybe, just maybe, that will be enough. Story 2. My sleep app recorded something that shouldn't exist. At 3:14 a.m., my sleep tracker captured a voice whispering my name. But I live alone. That's how it started. The night my world cracked open in the most impossible way. I'm a programmer in Seattle, and like many of us, I wrestle with chronic insomnia. Nights stretched endlessly, filled with restless tossing and strange blackouts that left me confused the next day. Desperate for answers, I installed a new AI-powered sleep app, hoping it could explain the shadows in my mind. But what it recorded was something I wasn't prepared for, something that would unravel the very fabric of my reality. If you want to know what I discovered, and why I'm warning you now, stay with me till the end. And if you're ready to face what lurks in the silence, make sure to subscribe now. Because once you hear this story, there's no turning back. I'm a software engineer, living alone in a small apartment in Seattle. For years, insomnia has been my constant companion. Nights filled with racing thoughts, headaches, and that gnawing sense that something was just off. Sometimes I'd wake up with no memory of hours that had passed, blackouts that my mind refused to explain. One day, a colleague recommended a new AI-powered sleep monitoring app. It promised to track sleep patterns, heart rate, even sounds, and offer detailed insights. Skeptical, but hopeful, I downloaded it and set it up on my phone. At first, it was just another tool, but the app recorded more than I bargained for. It was like having a hidden camera in my mind, capturing moments I couldn't remember living. Each morning, I'd listen to the previous night's audio, hoping to catch clues about my insomnia. The first few nights were quiet, just the usual creaks and city noises. But soon, something changed. One night, at exactly 3:14 a.m., the app picked up a whisper, a soft voice, calling my name. My name. It wasn't just one voice. It sounded layered, multiple tones overlapping in a strange, unsettling harmony. What terrified me most was that the voice seemed to come from the corner of my room, the very corner where only an empty bookshelf sat. I tried to brush it off as a glitch, or maybe my brain filling in gaps during half-sleep. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew clearer, more insistent. The more I listened, the more my mind spiraled. Was I losing it? Or was something else in that room with me? That's when I realized the app wasn't just recording sounds. It was recording a nightmare I was living. The nights that followed became a twisted puzzle I couldn't escape. Every recording revealed more voices, sometimes overlapping, sometimes whispering words I couldn't understand. The language was alien, guttural, like it belonged to something not of this world. I kept checking that corner of the room, the empty bookshelf, and yet there was nothing there. No source for the voices, just shadows playing tricks on my eyes. The tension built, gnawing at my sanity. I stopped telling friends. How do you explain that your sleep app is recording voices that aren't there, that you're hearing whispers no one else can hear? My days grew heavy with fatigue, my nights darker with dread. One night, I woke up feeling an overwhelming sense of presence, like something was watching me from that corner. My heart raced as I lay still, paralyzed by fear. I convinced myself I needed proof. I set up cameras around the apartment, focusing especially on that corner. Watching the footage the next day was worse than any nightmare. I saw myself getting up at 2:47 a.m., eyes glazed and unseeing. I was pacing the room, murmuring words that made no sense, words from the alien tongue that haunted my recordings. At one point, I seemed to be tracing strange symbols in the air, as if opening invisible doors. And then, in one clip, a shadow moved just beyond my line of sight. It didn't belong to me. It didn't belong to anything I could name. That presence watched, and it was patient. I realized then I wasn't just hearing voices. I was sharing my space with something else, something awake, something waiting. After watching those videos, I was convinced I was losing my mind. But what scared me more was the undeniable proof that something was there, something unseen, but very real. I couldn't keep pretending the voices were just in my head anymore. So I doubled down on the cameras, placing them everywhere. The bedroom, the living room, especially that empty corner. I had to catch whatever was haunting me. The next nights were worse. I watched myself sleepwalk, reciting strange incantations in that unearthly language, hands moving as if tracing shapes in the air. One time, my fingers hovered inches above the wall, and I swear I saw a thin, shimmering ripple, as if a tear was forming in the fabric of reality. On the footage, I wasn't alone. There was a figure, shadowy, indistinct, but definitely there, watching me silently. It never moved, but its presence was chilling. It lurked just beyond the camera's view, always lurking in the shadows, always watching. I tried to speak about it, to get help, but no one believed me. I became a prisoner in my own apartment, trapped by sleepless nights and creeping terror. I started skipping work, too scared to leave my home, fearing what might follow me outside. My reality began to fracture. Sleep became a battleground. Every night was a fight, not to surrender to the whispers, not to let the presence take control. And then the recordings changed. One night, my sleep tracker stopped at 3:14 a.m. The video footage showed me vanish from bed for 43 minutes. I wasn't there, just empty sheets, untouched. When I returned, I whispered something I couldn't understand at first. "The sleeper beneath is waking." Those words echoed in my mind, chilling me to the core. Whatever I'd been fighting wasn't just a ghost or hallucination. It was something far older, far darker, and it was waking up. That night, after the recording showed me disappear for 43 minutes, everything changed. I woke up feeling different, like a fog had lifted, but a shadow had taken its place. I replayed the clip again and again, watching myself slip away from bed, moving through the apartment as if controlled by something else. My lips moved, whispering the alien language, opening something. A portal? A door? I couldn't be sure. The phrase, "the sleeper beneath is waking," echoed relentlessly in my mind. What did it mean? Who or what was the sleeper? Desperation took over. I smashed my phone to pieces, thinking if I destroyed the device, I could end this nightmare. But the recordings kept coming, sent automatically to dark corners of the internet I'd never heard of. Forums filled with warnings, cryptic messages about a cycle's awakening, about a presence lurking beneath the thin veil separating worlds. The more I tried to fight, the deeper I was pulled in. My reality fractured further. Shadows crept at the edges of my vision. Whispers invaded my waking moments, and sleep became a battleground between me and the ancient entity stirring below. Friends stopped returning my calls. They thought I'd gone mad, maybe worse. I didn't care. I was trapped, a prisoner of my own mind and the app that recorded my descent. And then, 6 months later, everything changed again. I was at my breaking point. Every night, the whispers grew louder, the shadows thicker. I couldn't sleep without feeling eyes burning into my back. The entity was no longer content to stay in the corners of my room. It was invading every corner of my mind. I tried everything: meditation, therapy, even moving out. But the app, or whatever force was behind it, followed me. The recordings kept uploading automatically, even without my phone being nearby. I watched helplessly as the videos spread across obscure forums. People I didn't know began commenting, sharing warnings, sharing fear. The cycle's awakening wasn't just a message. It was a contagion. One night, desperate to end it, I smashed the phone again, this time destroying every piece I could find. But the next morning, a new notification appeared. A new recording had been uploaded. Same whispers, same alien tongue, same chilling message. I realized then that this wasn't about technology. It wasn't about me. It was something ancient, something beyond human understanding, using me as a vessel. I was caught in a loop, a story I couldn't escape. And worse, it seemed the entity wanted me to tell its tale. My only hope now was that someone, somewhere, would listen and understand before it was too late. 6 months later, after I'd all but vanished from my old life, a final post appeared on Reddit. It was from my account. The username was mine, the timing too precise to be coincidence. Attached was an audio file. I hesitated, but curiosity won. The moment I played it, a cold shiver ran through me. The voice on the recording wasn't human. It whispered in that same alien tongue, echoing softly, but somehow it reached deep inside my mind. That night, I dreamed, not of my apartment, not of sleepwalkers or shadows, but of a vast, endless darkness, something ancient stirring beneath the earth, watching, waiting. The post ended with a warning. If you hear this, you are next. The sleeper beneath is waking. Since then, I've lost contact with anyone who knew me. The account remains active, silent, but ready to spread the warning. I'm sharing this now because you need to know some things recorded by your sleep app aren't glitches. They're messages. They're warnings. If you start hearing whispers, don't ignore them. And if your app records a voice that shouldn't exist, don't listen alone. Subscribe now to stay alert, because once the sleeper stirs, there's no going back. Story 3. The Forest Ranger's map that showed the future. I saw myself dead on the trail map, and the time it said was exactly 2 hours from now. That's what kept James awake that night, staring at the flickering screen in his cramped ranger station deep inside Yellowstone National Park. A veteran forest ranger with decades of experience, he wasn't easily rattled. But this was something else. The map before him was no ordinary guide. It was old, weathered, and left behind by his predecessor, a man who vanished mysteriously years ago. Trails on the map shifted like shadows, appearing and disappearing with the phases of the moon. And now it was marking James's death with a chilling precision he couldn't ignore. If you want to uncover what happens next and learn the truth behind the cursed map, stay with me until the end. And don't forget to subscribe, because this is one story you won't want to miss. Because sometimes the forest doesn't just hide secrets, it controls fate itself. James had spent nearly 20 years patrolling the vast wilderness of Yellowstone. He knew the park's every ridge and river, every rustle in the underbrush, every animal's call, yet nothing in his long career had prepared him for the discovery that awaited him in the old ranger's cabin, deep in the park's forgotten north sector. It was a rainy afternoon when James stumbled upon a weathered leather satchel tucked beneath a loose floorboard. Inside, wrapped in brittle parchment, lay the map. Unlike any map James had seen, this one was peculiar. The trails weren't static lines, but fluid, almost alive. Under the glow of his lantern, the paths shimmered subtly, shifting and changing, their shapes influenced by the phases of the moon. Curiosity mixed with unease as James traced his finger over the twisting lines. There were places marked that he'd never heard of, trails leading to clearings and hollows absent from any official records. More unsettling was the way certain trails would vanish, only to be replaced by new ones overnight. Over the next weeks, James studied the map obsessively. It became his constant companion, appearing on his desk in the early morning light, or tucked inside his jacket during patrols. He noticed the map seemed to predict events, fallen trees, animal movements, and strange occurrences he had no explanation for. The turning point came one cold evening when he spotted a new marking that made his blood run cold, a red X with a small symbol denoting death, and beside it, the time, 2 hours from the moment he saw it. James's heart pounded as he realized the red X was placed right along a trail he was scheduled to patrol that night. The forest seemed to grow silent, heavy with a foreboding that pressed in from every side. Could this map truly foresee the future? And if so, was it guiding him toward his own end? Despite his doubts, the veteran ranger knew one thing for certain. He had to confront whatever fate awaited him in those woods. As night fell over Yellowstone, James prepared for his patrol with a mix of unease and determination. The forest around him seemed to hold its breath, shadows lengthening under the pale moonlight. He clutched the map tightly, its shifting trails a silent reminder that the park was no longer just a place of nature, but a puzzle with deadly stakes. Almost immediately, the map's predictions began to unfold. Just as the map indicated, a towering pine tree crashed across a nearby trail, blocking his path. The sound of the fall echoed eerily, confirming the map's accuracy and deepening James's dread. Further along, he encountered signs of a recent animal attack: broken branches, bloodstains on the ground, and claw marks etched into the bark of an ancient oak. The map had shown these markers hours before, like a warning etched in ink. But the most chilling sight was yet to come. As he turned a bend in the trail, James froze. There, marked clearly on the map, lay the place where his death was supposed to happen. The forest seemed to close in, the wind whispering through the leaves like a dark lullaby. Despite every instinct screaming to turn back, James pressed forward, determined to face whatever awaited him. But the map continued to shift, revealing new trails and altering the course ahead. Every step felt like walking deeper into a trap, a maze where the rules of time and space bent in ways he couldn't comprehend. And just when James thought he might find a way out, the map revealed something new: a trail leading to a clearing no one was supposed to know existed. The forest's secrets were far darker and more twisted than he ever imagined. The moment James saw the new trail appear on the map, a cold knot tightened in his stomach. Unlike the others, this path seemed unnatural, almost pulsing with an eerie energy beneath the parchment. It wasn't just a line anymore. It was a call, beckoning him deeper into the heart of the forest, toward a clearing that didn't belong on any map or in any memory. He debated turning back, but something stronger than fear pushed him forward. The forest around him thickened, shadows lengthening until they seemed almost alive, stretching like dark fingers between ancient trees. The usual chorus of wildlife had fallen silent, replaced by an oppressive stillness that pressed against his chest like the weight of a nightmare. As he followed the new trail, the air grew colder, and the faintest sound began to whisper through the branches, a haunting melody, like a flute playing somewhere far away, but impossibly close. The notes were soft, yet penetrating, weaving through the mist like a spell. James's mind raced with the warning he'd found scrawled in the notes left by his predecessor. Don't follow the sound of the flute. The words echoed like a mantra in his head. but the music pulled him onward, irresistible and sinister. The path twisted and turned, guiding him past ancient trees scarred with strange symbols etched deep into the bark, faint carvings of creatures, half seen, half imagined, lurking just beyond human perception. Time seemed to distort. Minutes stretched into hours. Shadows shifted against the moon's light, and the boundary between the real and the unreal blurred. When he finally reached the clearing, the moonlight revealed something chilling. The body of his predecessor, lifeless and pale, eyes staring blankly into the void. Beside him lay a crude wooden flute, its surface etched with the same cryptic symbols that haunted the trees. James knelt beside the corpse, heart pounding. A faded note rested clutched in the dead man's hand, bearing a final message. Don't follow the sound of the flute. The weight of the forest's secret pressed down on him. He realized that this place was a trap, a snare woven by something ancient, a being not bound by time, feeding on fear and controlling fate itself. With every breath, the haunting flute melody grew louder, as if the forest itself was alive, calling James deeper into its dark heart. His fight for survival had just begun. James sat frozen in the clearing, the note trembling in his hand. The warning burned into his mind. Don't follow the sound of the flute. But the melody had already wrapped around his senses, pulling him closer, like a phantom's lure. He glanced at the wooden flute lying beside the corpse. It was ancient, carved with symbols that seemed to pulse faintly in the moonlight. The very air around it shimmered with an unnatural coldness, as if the flute itself held a slumbering power. His thoughts raced back to the shifting map, the way it had guided him here, as if it were alive and had its own will. The forest was no longer just a wilderness. It was a labyrinth of fate and time, controlled by forces beyond human understanding. As the flute's eerie notes floated through the clearing once more, James felt a chill that ran deeper than cold air. It was as if the music was unraveling reality itself, blurring the line between past, present, and future. Desperate to resist, James gripped the map tighter, noticing the trails rearranging again. One new path appeared, a twisted route away from the clearing. It was faint, almost hidden beneath the older lines, but it was there, a chance to escape the forest's deadly game. But the choice was clear. Follow the lure of the flute and face the unknown horror that awaited, or take the hidden path and gamble with fate. The forest held its breath. James took a deep breath, steeling his nerves. He chose the hidden trail. As he moved away from the clearing, the flute's song faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed in from every side. But even as he put distance between himself and the corpse, James knew one thing. The forest's ancient guardian was still watching, still waiting, and the map was far from finished with him. James followed the hidden trail, his senses sharpened by a mixture of dread and determination. The forest around him seemed to breathe, the ancient trees whispering secrets older than time itself. Every step felt like walking deeper into a dream or a nightmare he couldn't wake from. The moonlight filtered through thick branches, casting twisted shadows that danced at the edges of his vision. The air was thick, with an almost electric tension, as if the forest held its breath, waiting for something to stir. Then, from the silence, the haunting flute melody began again, softer this time, almost distant, but unmistakable. It wound through the trees, weaving a spell that tightened around James's mind, pulling at memories and fears he didn't know he had. His heart pounded as he reached a clearing unlike any he'd seen before. The earth was scarred, as if clawed by some enormous, unseen beast. The air shimmered with a strange heat, though the night was cold. In the center stood a figure, tall and shadowed, with limbs that seemed to ripple and blur like smoke. Eyes like burning embers pierced the darkness, fixed upon James with an ancient hunger. Time warped around them. The map had been right. This was the forest's secret, a being beyond mortal comprehension, capable of bending reality and feeding on fear itself. James felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the crushing inevitability of fate. He tried to run, but the shadows twisted and stretched, blocking his path. The flute's song grew louder, a hypnotic rhythm that threatened to shatter his will. With a final, desperate surge, James fought against the pull, breaking free of the trance long enough to tear the map from his pocket and throw it into the fire nearby. Flames licked the parchment, and the forest seemed to recoil, the shadowed figure fading into the darkness with a guttural hiss. Breathing hard, James stumbled back, his heart racing but alive. The ancient entity was momentarily banished, but he knew the battle was far from over. The forest still whispered its secrets, still held its ancient power, and James was now bound to the map's dark legacy forever. Days later, back at the ranger station, James thought he was safe. The map was burned, the shadowy figure banished, at least for now. Yet something in the air felt off, a whisper of something still watching. Then his walkie-talkie crackled to life, breaking the silence with a chilling message. "You're not supposed to be here." Over and over, the phrase repeated, echoing through the static like a spectral warning that refused to fade. James tried to ignore it, thinking it was a malfunction, but no matter where he went, the message followed. The forest's ancient guardian hadn't given up. It was still there, lurking in the unseen spaces, waiting. Friends noticed the change in him, the way his eyes darted to shadows, the way he jumped at the slightest sound. He was haunted, not just by what he'd seen, but by what he'd become. The legend of the shifting map grew darker. Rangers whispered in hushed tones about trails that appeared only to lead the unwary to their doom. The clearing remained, a place that, by all rights, shouldn't exist. And the haunting melody of the flute, it still drifts on the wind, a reminder that some secrets are better left buried. If this story chilled you to the bone, make sure to subscribe and share it with others who crave the unknown, because in places like Yellowstone, the past and future collide, and sometimes the forest never lets you go. Story 4. My friend's basement is a gateway to somewhere else. I was warned not to go into the third door, but by the time I heard the words, I was already inside. My friend and I had just started renovating his old house in the Chicago suburbs. It was supposed to be a simple project, peeling paint, creaky floors, the usual. But when we uncovered that hidden compartment in the basement, everything changed. 3 heavy stone doors, locked tight, staring back at us like silent sentinels, guarding a secret. Curiosity gnawed at me. Every time I looked at those doors, I felt drawn toward them, like they were alive, waiting. My friend warned me to stay away, especially from the third one, said some things were better left alone, but I didn't listen. And now, I'm trapped inside a place where time doesn't move, where reality twists and fractures around me. If you want to know what I found beyond those doors, and why I might never be the same again, stick around. And before we dive in, hit subscribe so you don't miss a moment of this twisted journey. Because some doors don't just lead to rooms, they lead to somewhere else entirely. When we first started tearing down the old basement walls, everything felt normal, until we found that hidden compartment. It was cleverly concealed behind a false panel, dusty and forgotten for decades. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of damp stone and something else, something old. There, standing side by side, were 3 massive stone doors. Each one was carved from rough granite, cold to the touch, and sealed shut without any visible locks or hinges. The craftsmanship was unlike anything I'd ever seen, as if they were built for a purpose beyond our understanding. My friend, Mark, was just as shaken as I was. He swore the house held secrets, but even he hadn't dared to touch the doors. He told me stories he'd heard from neighbors, whispers about strange noises coming from the basement at night, unexplained shadows shifting in the corner of your eye, and a feeling like the house was watching you. Despite all that, I was drawn closer. Every time I went down there, my eyes fixed on the doors, wondering what was behind them. Mark was clear. Don't open the third door. Whatever you do, don't touch it. But the other 2? He was less worried about those. The basement itself was a strange place, damp and echoing. With every sound, the air felt heavy, like it carried memories from another time. The longer I stayed near the doors, the more I felt that same pull, a magnetic force urging me to step beyond the threshold. The question was, what waited behind those doors? One afternoon, Mark had to step out for a few hours, leaving me alone in the house. The silence was thick, broken only by the creaks and groans of the old timber. That magnetic pull toward the doors was stronger than ever. I found myself standing before them, heart pounding. My hand hovered over the cold stone of the first door. No lock, no keyhole, just the smooth surface beneath my fingers, almost as if the door was waiting for me to open it. Without fully understanding why, I pushed. To my shock, it gave way, swinging open silently into darkness. Stepping inside, I felt a sudden shift in the air. The room was much larger than the door's narrow frame suggested. Vast, endless even, stretching beyond sight. The walls faded into shadows that flickered like liquid, and the floor beneath my feet felt soft, almost unreal. Time seemed to stop. Seconds stretched and warped. Colors shifted oddly around the edges of my vision. I called out, but my voice came back muffled, swallowed by an unseen void. As I moved deeper, I noticed the faint sound of whispers, distorted, echoing words that teased the edge of comprehension. Then I saw them, shadows flickering just beyond the dim light, figures that looked like me, but wrong, twisted, fragmented versions of myself, wandering lost through endless corridors. A voice whispered, barely audible, "You've awakened what sleeps in the cycle of geometries." I froze, terror flooding my mind. What had I done? What had I unlocked? And then I heard it, a slow creak from behind me. The third door, the one I was told never to touch, was opening on its own. The corridor stretched endlessly, folding in on itself like a fractal nightmare. I wasn't just walking through a space. I was wandering through a maze of memories, reflections, and broken fragments of myself. Each distorted version I passed was like a cracked mirror image, warped and unsettling. Some looked terrified, others angry, some completely hollow, their eyes empty voids. They moved slowly, aimlessly, as if trapped in an eternal loop of confusion and despair. The whispers followed me, soft, unintelligible murmurs that sometimes coalesced into words, warning me to turn back, to close the door, to forget. But I couldn't. The pull was too strong. At one point, I stumbled into a small room filled with strange, geometric shapes, hanging mid-air, rotating, folding, and unfolding in impossible patterns. They shimmered with colors I couldn't name, their forms defying logic. It was as if I had stepped into an equation written by a mad god. The voice came again, clearer this time. "You have opened the cycle. You have disturbed the sleeping geometries." Panic surged through me. What were these geometries? What had I awakened? The distorted versions of myself seemed to be fragments trapped between worlds, echoes of who I was and what I could become. Time warped. Minutes could have been hours or seconds. I lost track of my own steps, my own breath. Then, suddenly, the walls shook. A low hum vibrated through the air, deep and resonant. Ahead, the third door, the one I was warned about, creaked open wider, like a maw, swallowing the darkness whole. I hesitated, heart hammering. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper. Something was waiting behind that door, something I wasn't prepared to face. The third door loomed ahead, its rough stone surface now glowing faintly under an unseen light. It swung open silently, revealing a dark passage that seemed to breathe and pulse. I stepped through, every nerve on fire. Inside, the air was thick with something ancient and restless. Shadows curled and shifted, distorting the space around me. Then I saw him, my friend, Mark, but not as I knew him. He was older, his skin pale and stretched tight over bones, and his eyes were pitch black, voids that swallowed all light. He didn't smile or speak at first, just stared. Then his voice cut through the silence, low and hollow. "I had to let you in so I could get out." Those words hit me like a punch. What did he mean? How had he ended up like this? I wanted to ask, but the words caught in my throat. The space around us began to warp, walls folding and unfolding like paper. Fractals exploded across the ceiling and floors, patterns endlessly repeating, twisting reality into shapes I couldn't comprehend. Mark reached out, his hand trembling but steady. "You're part of this now. There's no going back. Fear wrapped around me like ice, but deeper than that was a strange sense of inevitability, as if fate itself had woven me into this cosmic equation. The fractals pulsed, the walls breathing in sync with our ragged breaths. Time lost all meaning. We were trapped in an endless loop, a cycle of geometries that refused to break. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The last thing I saw, before everything collapsed, was Mark's black eyes staring deep into mine, full of sorrow, regret, and something terrifyingly unknown. The world around me began to unravel. The walls, once solid stone, folded into impossible shapes, endless fractals spiraling into infinity. Colors bled beyond their edges, warping the very fabric of the space we occupied. It felt as if I was trapped inside a living equation, one that twisted and turned with every breath I took. Mark's figure shimmered, flickering between forms, sometimes human, sometimes a monstrous silhouette made of shifting shadows and light. His voice echoed around me, distorted and multiplied. You can't escape the cycle. You are part of it now. I tried to focus, to find some anchor in this chaos, but everything was slipping away. Time fractured. Moments stretched and snapped back like broken glass. My own thoughts echoed back to me, fragmented and indecipherable. Suddenly, the fractal walls pulsed, and a terrifying calm washed over me. In that moment, I understood. This place was alive. It fed on fear, on confusion, on the bending of reality itself. The basement was no longer just a room beneath a house. It was a gateway, an endless labyrinth where geometry and madness danced together. I reached out, desperate for something real, something solid, but my hand passed through the air like smoke. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me whole was Mark's black eyes, filled with a silent apology. When I finally came to, I was back in my own bed, the familiar creak of the old house around me. For a moment, relief washed over me. I was home, safe, or so I thought. But something was wrong. Downstairs, in the corner of my basement, where there used to be nothing but cold concrete and clutter, now stood a door, a fourth door, stone, rough and ancient, just like the others, silent and waiting. I tried to tell myself it was a dream, that the horrors I faced were just tricks of the mind. But deep down, I knew better. That door wasn't supposed to exist, and whatever waits beyond it is still out there, watching, waiting. I want to warn anyone who listens. Some doors don't just lead to other rooms. They lead to places beyond comprehension, places where time and reality bend and break. If you feel drawn to mysteries like this, be careful. Curiosity can be a trap. And if you want to hear more stories that blur the line between the real and the unreal, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because sometimes the most terrifying place is the one right beneath your feet.